In 2017, we get season 2 of Stranger Things. Once again, this show is created by the Duffer Brothers, starring Winona Ryder, David Harbour, Millie Bobby Brown, Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, McLaughlin, and Noah Schnapp. This season of Stranger Things takes place in the fall of 1984, where Will Byers becomes once again a target of the Upside Down, this time by an entity known as the Mind Flayer. So we're going to talk about this season and help you decide whether or not it's the right one to watch as a Christian right now. Hey friends, welcome to the channel. I am your host Tim, and we exist to help Christians live in the world, not of the world, by utilizing our convictions in the movies and shows we watch. Stranger Things Season 2 is rated TV-14 for some fear and gore, some violence, and of course, some smoking. So we're going to dive into any convictions you may have that may prevent you from watching this season of Stranger Things, any theological themes present within it, and wrap it up with my own personal thoughts on this season. Without further ado, let's dive into the Christian Conviction Meter. If this is your first time here, the Christian Conviction Meter is a series of 5 convictions that may distract or hinder your relationship with Jesus. Ultimately, we are a resource to help you figure out whether or not Stranger Things aligns with the convictions that God has given you. And for violence and gore here, it is a little darker than the original season of Stranger Things, although many of the elements that were in this first season carry over into this next season. There's some hand-to-hand combat, there's some gunfire, there's lots of blood, specifically from attacks from demogorgons, demodogs, specifically demodogs in this season, where they just attack, and so there's a lot of blood that's a part of the show, and some gore in that regard, just some flesh and just massive cuts and bruises, and it's can get very gross at times. The biggest thing to note here is due to the nature of these kind of demodog creatures, they will eat whatever, and so we do see several sequences of them eating, whether it's a cat or it's other people, and so the noise can be creepy, the actual visuals on screen are also creepy. Again, just a lot of blood in this season, and definitely some injuries, and like I mentioned, some cuts, scrapes, bruises, some gashes, stuff like that. It's a pretty heavy season. Once again, we're going to give this a 4 out of 5 in this category. Our next category is lust, and there isn't as much in this season as there was in season 1 of the show. That being said, though, there still is some things here. There's some kissing, there's some shirtless scenes from some guys due to just things going on. Particularly, there's like a shower scene, right, in a school gym shower, but it's just from here up that you see. There also are a few suggestive comments as well. There also is a scene of a woman who's taking a bath. She's reading a book. I would assume it's probably not the greatest thing to be reading. And like I mentioned, also some suggestive comments from different characters throughout this season. All that to be said, we are going to give this a 2 out of 5 just to be on the safe side here. Our next category is substances, and just like season 1, there is definitely some smoking that takes place throughout this entire season. However, there's a bit more alcohol presence in this season than there was in the last one. In particular, there's some alcoholic punch, there's some beers and wines, and a few other harder substances as well. Substances in terms of just drinks, not necessarily in the way of drugs. That being said, though, there also is a character who is visibly drunk as a part of this season of the show, and you can tell just by slurred speech and just a mix of different things here. All that to say, we are going to give this a 4 out of 5 in this category. Our next category is profanity, and there's a decent amount here as per usual, like with the last season of the show. Hell is used, the DI and DA words are used, the A word is used, the SH word, as well as the BI word. There's a good chance there are a few other words that are part of this season that I potentially missed. There also is many uses of the middle finger as a part of this season, and there also is several uses of the word Jesus that are a part of this show in particular. All that to say, we are going to give this a 4 out of 5 in this category. Our last category is intense/horror scenes. While this is not explicitly a horror show just yet, it does have a lot of thriller elements that could lead into some borderline horror here. The biggest thing to note here is, of course, the nature of the Upside Down, which is this alternate dimension, this alternate world that is a part of this show. It's dark, creepy, it can be very disturbing at times, and in particular, our lead kind of villain of this season is known as the Mind Flayer. He's a big giant spider-like cloud in the show. He is also pretty disturbing as well, pretty dark, sinister, and he does a lot of things that are really creepy, such as invading into Will Byers' mind via his mouth and his nose and a few other areas as well that can get pretty creepy and disturbing. There also are several deaths contained within the show. There's a few moments in which these deaths are kind of propped up as more emotional moments throughout this season. There also are a lot of violent shakes and spasms due to the nature of what happens to Will within this season. So much so that there also is a exorcism-like moment that happens within this season in particular that can be very disturbing. Doesn't matter what the age in watching this show. It is pretty dark, pretty brutal, and it can be very, very creepy, especially when you see just some of the invasive parts of this like shadow dust figure kind of slowly creep in throughout Will as it slowly becomes a part of him. And so that is something to keep in mind. And like I mentioned earlier, there also is a demodog who eats a cat and eats other people. All of these are intense moments. They are disturbing and creepy, sometimes horror-esque as well. And there also is some fights with these demodogs that happen throughout this season. So all of that to say, we are going to give this a 4 out of 5 in this category. So our grand total on the conviction meter is going to be an 18 out of 25. Overall, a very strong season in terms of just some of its ratings here between the profanity use, the intense / horror scenes used here in the show, as well as its violence and gore. The biggest thing to note here is, just like the last season, this is a very gory show. So if you struggle with blood or anything of that sort, this may not be the show for you. And as I always like to say here on the channel when it comes to the conviction meter, make sure to follow the convictions God has given you. If you struggle in any of the areas we've talked about, don't worry about watching the show, because no show is as important as your relationship with Jesus. No show is more important than following Jesus. And so make sure to keep in line with the convictions that he has given you. That way you can continue to pursue after him with all you have. That leads us beautifully into our next topic as we dive into some theological themes that are present within season 2. And to be honest, I really didn't see much of anything here in terms of theological themes or anything sort of present within the show. Is there something I may have missed? Possibly, but there really isn't anything explicitly about Jesus, the Bible, Christianity, the church, none of that. The closest we do kind of get is, like I mentioned earlier, the kind of exorcism-esque scene, but there isn't like a prayer or holy water used. I don't know a lot of research on exorcism, so I don't fully know the process of what takes place, but I do know that the Bible is not used and there is no Christian elements contained within it. But all that to say, there isn't anything explicitly about Christianity within season 2 of Stranger Things. This leads us into our last topic as we dive into what I think of Stranger Things season 2. And overall, this is a solid continuation from the last season. We continue to see our characters develop here, become much stronger, not only in their acting, but also as characters in general. One thing I do find really cool about this season in particular is we do get to spend a little bit more time with Will. Will was not really he was the centerpiece of the show, but he wasn't all that present within the season, so we get to spend a lot more time with him here, even though he is once again under abuse in this season. I also love that we get to see Dustin and Lucas's families. We get introduced to Erica very briefly, Lucas's younger sister, who becomes a bigger part in later seasons, but we also get introduced to a few new characters here within the show. specifically Bob, who becomes Joyce's new boyfriend, played by Sean Astin, as well as Max, who's played by Sadie Sink. And so we get introduced to those characters. They're a much bigger part of the season, and they just fit right in. I really enjoy these characters, and of course, Max has been a big part of Stranger Things going forward, especially having a very pivotal role in season 4. Both of these characters very enjoyable. We also get introduced to Max's stepbrother, Billy. Billy's a really solid character. Overall, we continue to expand the world, and we continue to expand with just different characters being added in. It's really nice, and again, just like last season, is the strength of this show. I also love that we get some dynamic duos. We get some really cool moments between some of our characters here. One in particular is the relationship between Hopper and Elle that is formed within this season. They deal with some really strong challenges, some arguments, some fighting, but they also have some really wholesome moments within the show, and it becomes honestly a really great relationship that we see going forward into the next 2 seasons, as well as, of course, we get the amazing duo of Dustin and Steve, which becomes a much bigger part of season 3. It gets introduced here, and it's absolutely amazing. I love this duo so much. It's fantastic. The banter they have and just the relationship dynamic, I think it's just really, really great. And overall, this, like I said, is a very solid continuation. For the most part, every single episode does feel very strong. Although I will say this, episode 7, in view of the last several seasons, feels very out of place, feels very filler. I know there's bits and pieces of Elle kind of piecing together her past and piecing together just strengthening her powers. But in context, it feels very out of place, and it feels very weird for this show in particular. All that to say, though, it still is a solid season, even with that episode feeling kind of filler. It's a really strong season and overall enjoyable. That being said, I'm going to give it an 8.2 out of 10. In case you're curious on why we rate our seasons here on the channel, I rate every single episode and then divide it by the number of episodes. So adding up all the scores, and that's how you get an 8.2 out of 10. Overall, a really solid follow-up to the first season of Stranger Things. So it's an 18 out of 25 on the conviction meter. It is a 8.2 out of 10 in our review. Those are my thoughts, so let me know yours down in the comments below. Let's chat all things about Stranger Things Season 2 in the comments. And while you're down there, consider hitting that like and subscribing for us, joining our community here on YouTube. It just helps to send us out to the algorithm, allows us to reach more Christians to help them utilize their convictions to ultimately follow Jesus better. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with us here. We truly appreciate it. It means the absolute world to us. But before you go, there's a few video recommendations here that YouTube is suggesting to you, one of which we've already given you, which is our review of Season 1 of Stranger Things. Feel free to join us over there, and we'll see you all in the next video.